The ego is your interpreter. Between your consciousness and reality is the ego. It's a filter. It filters everything you say. It filters everything that comes in. And it's even the architect of your thought process. It's what prioritizes everything you do. It's a survivalist. And the irony is it's the sorcerer that conjures the very experience that it forces you to survive. It's the director of your personal twilight zone. Your patterns, your vicious circles, everything that repeats, all your confusion, your hope, your despair, the future you're living into, the proverbial someday where you're healed, you're fixed. Every molecule of brokenness, trauma, self-significance, whether you're good enough or not, your hierarchy, your identity is your ego. It's not separate from that. The ego is not just egotistical or something that you assert to be better than other people. No, your ego is just whatever you are, whatever you think of yourself, your self-assessment, the idealization that you retroactively use to describe yourself, and all the patterns, understanding, figuring it out, analytical thinking, the feelings of being good enough, the feelings of being not good enough. Your ego is like your Geppetto, pulling all your strings. It's got your emotions on a yo-yo. One moment you're good enough, the next moment you're not good enough. And when you become not good enough, you embody it. That not good enough is not just a feeling. It's not true. It's just true that you experience it. You embody being not good enough. You become the failure. You become the not good enough. You become the abandoned. Your body takes on the personification of ego. And you walk through this life slumped or triumphant. And it's all circumstantial. You see, the ego is the conflation between a meaningless reality and then everything you make it mean about yourself. That you are a stimulus response machine. Everything has to mean something. Everything. Because your ego is a meaning-making machine, that you do not know how to not make meaning about yourself because you're fundamentally incomplete at all times. That your ego is on an Easter egg hunt, playing Pokemon, looking for what's missing, looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for wholeness, looking for belonging, trying to avoid abandonment, trying to become successful, trying to self-improve. Oh, the ego is such a student of life. I mean, gosh, your ego is a regular Shakespeare about everything that's wrong with you. Oh, you've got real poetry in you, man. Gosh, like you are ready to write a memoir as if it's going to help someone else, when nothing you've ever read has helped you either. Because all the ego wants is help. It just wants to improve. It just wants to refine its craft of trying to become good enough to avoid failure, avoid rejection, or just to avoid trying. The ego doesn't have to be the best. The ego wants a comfort zone. For some people, the comfort zone is being the best because they feel not good enough if there's anyone better than them. Other people are conflict avoidant. Being the best, that's not for them. They don't want to upset anybody or speak out of place. They don't need all that. They just need enough. They just want to be enough. So being enough is just enough. And so check in, check out, no real commitment, no big deal. You don't need what they need. You've got it figured out. You get to avoid some of that anxiety and stress and pressure. And so you just deal with the resignation of never really getting what you want, but it's okay. It's not worth it to you. And so your ego is a compromise. I don't need everything. I'll never be fully happy. These people are having fun, but at least I won't be stressed out. Okay. And the other ego is broken, a broken ego. Oh, you're broken. Oh, you're traumatized and broken. So you can avoid all accountability. You're a victim of what happened. And you're real angry. Because anything that challenges your entitlement to be a victim, that's compromising, your cover, your avoidance. You see, being a victim to your brokenness and yourself is the best way to just destroy any ambition on account that, you're broken. So you don't need to be expected to do anything. And so that's your ego's strategy for its comfort zone, is that it wants to define itself as a victim so it can justify its failures and get out of the accountability of the things it does. And so, you make other people responsible by disclosing. Like, you're very eager to let people know that you're screwed up because now it's their problem. They can't expect you to do better. You're traumatized, remember? And you told them. And so your ego loves its victimhood and understanding it all. Oh, just wants to know everything. So it can explain it. It wants understanding and acceptance more than anything. That's what the ego wants. Because the ego's a phantom. The ego needs constant reaffirmation. And the ego's always threatened, even when its nonsensical stories and dogmas and beliefs about itself and beliefs about life get challenged. And so the ego does not want to surrender its entitlements to define itself, to define life, to define other people, because anything that challenges the knowledge of the ego is something that threatens the ego's existence. And so the ego gets very angry at changes, any social changes, even if it's good. Because the ego spent all its life trying to figure this all out anyway. And once it decided what it wanted to believe is true, it locked it in, and now it's defending it. The ego's like highly defensive. The ego gets really agitated anytime somebody says something that the ego doesn't want to believe. The ego forms beliefs and then retroactively pretends as if it believes something is true. Because the only thing that matters to the ego is its own feelings. See, the feelings are truth to the ego. And so if the ego thinks that you made the ego feel stupid, then the ego's mad at you. If the ego thinks that you meant this when you said it, what you're saying meant that I'm not good enough, then the ego's a victim to that. That the ego takes no responsibility for its own emotions because the ego actually created the emotions as reality came to the consciousness. The ego, you're not good enough. The ego is the voice of the mind, the serpent in Adam and Eve, the deceiver. The one that will always fall short is ego, because ego is the architect of hell, because you can't escape it. Because everything you do in obedience of your fears, everything you avoid, everything you try to fix and change validates the inauthentic assessments of ego. Because real awakening is when you realize that there is no meaning in life. You see, and the ego will disagree with that because the ego survives only in the world of meaning. That the ego is the meaning. The ego is the not good enough. The ego is the broken. The ego is the celebrity. The ego is good, perfect, good enough. The ego is the entire assessment of self as both a deliberate construct and an involuntary reaction. And then every way of being to mitigate and overcome its own projected, afflicted emotions. And that's it.